This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Well, somebody else who's going to be saying goodbye is the Nature Boy from the Observer that was dated July 1st. Now, remember, he's going to date these episodes or these issues about 5 days before he publishes them. So the very day this is supposed to be in everyone's mailbox, July 1st, Flair's already gone. But here's the story that Dave wrote. In a story that was still up in the air as we're going to press, the future of Ric Flair in WCW is very much in doubt. According to 4 different sources, on Monday, during contract negotiations between Hurd and Flair's attorney, Dennis Guthrie, Hurd told Guthrie the company was giving Flair 30 days notice, and rumors began that Flair's final day with the company would either be July 14th in Baltimore or July 22nd in Los Angeles. As of Tuesday, Flair hadn't yet gotten notified by the office of his notice. Hurd denied the story and explained that 2 sides are simply trying to negotiate a contract extension from which all accounts would require Flair to take a huge pay cut from his 1-year contract, estimated at guaranteeing him between $700,000 and $750,000 per year, which wouldn't include additional income from his merchandising revenue. Flair is actually still under contract to WCW through June 1st, 1992. And according to Hurd, Flair has an escape clause in his contract that would allow him to quit, provided he gave 30 days written notice. Hurd said that WCW doesn't have a similar escape clause in the contract, which seems to mean the company can't legally give Flair notice without having to pay off the duration of the contract, although other sources say there are loopholes to the company's benefit. And you wrote in your book, Slobberknocker, My Life in Wrestling, that Hurd wanted changes and wanted younger and new stars and was developing it for the sake of change itself. And, of course, everyone knows Hurd wanted to change Ric's persona. He's talked a lot about, he made me cut my hair. He wanted to put me in an earring. And there is the famous talk of he wanted to make me Spartacus. When we talked to Jim Hurd about that, he denied it and said that was silly bullshit around a booking table. What if, ha ha ha, cutting up with the guys. And I kind of believe that. I don't think there's a scenario where Jim Hurd ever actually wanted. I guess we should add context, because this is the era where Ted Turner is investing in movies. And a lot of people thought, well, that's fucking stupid. Who would pay all this money for these rights to these movies? But then, like The Wizard of Oz, when that played on TV in full color for the first time, people thought, oh, he's a genius. Yeah. He was doing other movies like Gone with the Wind and a lot of others. Anyway, I'm saying all that to say, if he's investing in some of these classic movies, it's understandable that WCW, who also has programming on Turner stations, would be expected to cross promote. I went around the block twice there to explain. We created Oz. Dusty Rhodes pushed Oz out there. Of course, that was Kevin Nash under a goofy gimmick, but still, why would we randomly do that? Well, because Turner has the rights to the movie. So we get that. But even still, that seems like a gimmick or something you do for someone sort of coming up the ranks, not necessarily we're going to change Ric Flair and now call him Spartacus. That's not real. That's just funny. Ha ha.
Well, you're being realistic, and you're being using common sense, which is the wrong elements to use when talking about WCW booking and creative.
Okay.
In 1991 or virtually any year, before Bischoff got the reins, I remember a series of meetings where Turner Home Entertainment and maybe another division wanted us to help increase the monetization of the Turner library. Look, you got to remember, they started a whole network of Turner Classic Movies.
Yes, it did.
It wasn't a throwaway. It's a big deal. And they thought that one way to help that would be to create some wrestling characters that identified with some of the movies in their big library. And they had the best movies ever made till that point. So I think that's what that was. And Hurd, of course, going overboard, wanted to make sure this thing was, hitting on all cylinders, was willing to, create one character and see if it gets over. We don't need this, and this, And some of our themes of our pay-per-views were kind of Fantasy Island type bullshit. Not the show fantasy, but just crazy stuff. So I think that was an edict See if you can figure out a way to, of course, he's not going to fall on his sword. So we don't have any ideas. Can't say that.
Right.
So I think that's what that was, is just to try to integrate all the Turner properties. And you think about it like that, it's not a bad concept, but you still got to have the right character. Or like you said, it becomes funny, ha ha, and nobody gives two shits.
I don't listen. I'm going to stir up a hornet's nest here, but I do feel like we should just call a spade a spade. When Bret Hart refused to drop the title to Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series, a lot of people took issue with what Bret was doing and saying, "Oh, he's not doing business." And Bret was the babyface in that scenario. But a lot of people villainized him. But people said the same thing of Shawn Michaels. And Meltzer, for years, would say, Shawn never drops a belt. He'll lose his smile. He'll have to forfeit. He might never be able to wrestle again. Whatever it takes to not drop a belt in the ring. That was sort of the gist of a lot of the tone of the Observer at the time. And then, of course, there's the whole Jeff Jarrett situation where he's got the Intercontinental title and he's still got one date left on his contract. And Jeff Jarrett was the heel in that circumstance. But it feels like with this whole Ric Flair, Jim Herd thing, Flair is unanimously viewed as the babyface and Herd is the heel. And I think a lot of it comes down to, as you like to say here on the show, the cash and creative. In hindsight, did we get it wrong? Were we too hard on Herd? Or was Flair doing what was best for business? Was Flair being selfish? With the benefit of hindsight, do you view this any differently?
Not much. I think that both parties dropped the ball and not getting it solved.
Yeah.
Getting it solved before it festered, as they say in Oklahoma and Alabama. Roll Tide. It was like an open wound and it kept getting more infected. It never was going to heal at the rate and the route that this thing was taking. So they both got some explaining to do, so to speak. But Herd's problem was he was spouting off things in wrestling vernacular that if you knew anything about the business, you'd been around longer than a week or two, you knew that he didn't know what he's talking about.
Give me an example. Not a specific one. Just make one up in the.
Well, I'll give you the Hunchbacks are a great example.
Okay.
They can never lose. Well, first of all, any gimmick that you have on somebody that makes them unbeatable is not a good gimmick. It's just not.
Ask Goldberg.
It's just not.
Yeah.
So I just think these two cats they're both so hard-headed. They both believed in what they said and hurt himself by saying things like I was going to say that a veteran would talk about instead of coming up with ideas that were laughable. And you got to admit, two wrestlers with hunchbacks like they're in the Young Frankenstein movie, Igor. I got a lot of free time. So, they,
but now at the same time though, I mean, let's add context here. We've also got one of the greatest characters in the history of wrestling is an undead guy who can summon lightning and throw fire. And I mean, I'm just saying, he's going to tag along with a trio of vampires who drink blood. And we've also got a pimp character and a porn star character. I get hunchbacks are silly and they're stupid, but I'm just saying there's been a lot of successful, stupid shit in wrestling.
Yeah. But when you get to the degree that you can't be beat.
Yeah.
Because your shoulders can never be pinned because of your deformity. That to me takes you right off the edge into shit land. And that might be a t-shirt someday. I fell in shit land. And it's distressing to think about, but you're right. There's been a lot of lousy characters. It seems to me like, maybe I'm wrong here, Conrad, but it seems to me like in today's world of pro wrestling, the reality-based stuff is hitting a chord more than the fantasy stuff. Hypnotizing people, zombies. Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. Well, see, JR, you're old. It's passed you by. Yeah, that's it. I've lost all reasoning. I don't know what entertains me anymore because I got to go by what you say. And what you say is the shits. Look at the ratings. So bottom line is that everything for the sake or the name of entertainment is a weak ass excuse. Or just trying to entertain the audience. That's such a pussy way of getting out of it. Or just trying to entertain the audience. Sure. Keep drinking that Kool-Aid, buddy. Save your money. Because it's just not the way to engulf an audience. The audience has got to be able to relate to something in every character that you put on television.
Let's mention Flair and his departure is not without controversy in the locker room either, I'm sure, but nobody really talks about that. But before we do, let's give some context. This is from the Observer. It's the end of an era and the dawning of a new era. Ric Flair was fired by WCW Monday, effective immediately after both sides failed to reach an agreement on a contract extension, which would be from June 1st, 92 through May 31st, 94. The official word was faxed Monday afternoon by Jim Herd to Flair's attorney, Dennis Guthrie in Charlotte, that Flair's contract is being terminated effective August 1st, 1991. Flair was scheduled to drop the belt to Barry Windham on July 1st in Macon, in a revised plan decided upon within the last week that had been the subject of many behind the scenes problems. WCW officials weren't expecting Flair to show up on Macon. He was originally scheduled to be on vacation until Wednesday. The revised plan was for Windham to defend the title against Lex Luger in Baltimore, with Barry's title victory airing on TBS either this coming Sunday night or the day before the Baltimore show. It was announced in Macon that Flair had been stripped of the title due to contractual problems and that the two top contenders, Windham and Luger, would wrestle for the held up title on July 14th at the pay-per-view show. This marks the first time in the 43-year history of the NWA/WCW that the world title didn't change hands in the ring. This has got to be, it's the biggest story in wrestling. What's it like inside the office when you're hearing, wait a minute, we're stripping him? Are you thinking that you can have a conversation, or did you know Rick had his heels dug in a big way?
I always believe until somebody throws their hands up, walks away from me, that there's a way to solve an issue.
Yeah.
It's called communication, being reasonable, being fair on both sides. Here's the deal, in a real simply, here's how I would have looked at it as a head of talent. I got to know how much of my budget I have to cut. Total dollar number. You didn't say you got to cut blank out of Ric Flair's contract.
Right.
You're looking to save bottom line costs. And the magic number from the bean counters there in Turner is blank. Well, I can figure out a way to get you your number and never touch Flair's money.
Yeah.
It's called management, strategy. So I'm gonna forsake this veteran that's basically the face of our brand and has got more name identity than anybody else on our roster over mathematics now. It became more than mathematics, Conrad. It became personal with those guys.
Yeah, it did.
Herd dug his heels in, and he was making a statement. I'll show these son of bitches who's in charge. And then there was Flair, who said, I'm Ric Flair. I ain't got to put up this shit.
Yeah.
So I'm just disappointed that the communication didn't happen, and it could have been done very easily. We had nobody in that role. We had nobody in the quote unquote talent relations world at that time in Turner other than Mr. Hurd. He hired and fired. He negotiated. So it was not a good scenario whatsoever. We talked about this before. I said this about the committee, and I believe it to be true. It's a system built for failure, because active performers having the influence over the entire roster and over the entire show is unhealthy. A top guy having influence on his match or being willing to sit down with the younger guy and help him along is a different ballgame. Totally different ballgame. But having a committee of talents who are still actively involved in the game, affecting every match on the card, I find not to be healthy. That's just my opinion.
So there's lots of debate at the time about what exactly is being asked of Rick. I think the original idea was we're going to have you drop the belt to Luger in Baltimore. And we've talked about Luger a lot recently here on the show. We're probably 3 years too late on that. Maybe that should have happened in 88, but either way, he didn't want to do that. And he doesn't want to do that because he wants to be taken care of. Meaning WCW, depending on who you believe, had asked him to take a pay cut to $350,000 a year, meaning cancel your contract and do it now. And some folks within WCW at the time were saying, no, we were trying to get ready for the next one. He wanted to extend his current deal at the same rate, and we couldn't do that. So we were asking to extend it at half the rate, which obviously Flair doesn't have any interest in. Either way, the gist is Jim Ross was right. It's always about cash and creative, right?
I think so. Pretty much straightforward, simple thinking. But it was just, if you try to get in and you know, people are very protective like they are now in the wrestling business. I know there's a lot of guys from various companies that listen to the show, and we appreciate all you guys, all you ladies, and I wish you only nothing but the best. But every company's got to have somebody that is the talent liaison guy.
Yeah.
And, you know, Tony Khan does it. Christopher Daniels does a lot of talent relations work in that regard and does a very nice job. He's a veteran. He's been around. The boys know who he is, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, Tony's waist deep involved in almost everything. But he loves that. And we're lucky we have him to do that because he's got those young mid 30-year-old ideas. So, and the talents identify with him. They listen to the same music. They do the same. They have the same interests by and large, because of their age, the demographics they both reside in. But in WCW, we have Mr. Hurt, and the guy that needed to have the most product knowledge of anybody on the roster, I believe, has got to be one, the booker, and two, who's taking care of the talent, who's the talent relations person. Because you get faced with a zillion issues and questions and concerns. And talent can tell if you're bullshitting them from the first you open your mouth. You got those two roles have got to be solid as a rock. And we didn't have that solid as a rock feel in WCW, as we've gone over ad nauseum.
How much of this was just the locker room? Meaning, I believe at the time, Luger's on a $600,000 a year deal. I think Sting's somewhere in that same neighborhood. And now we're going to who most people regarded as being the real franchise for the NWA and WCW for a long time, Ric Flair, and saying, hey, we need you to take a pay cut by half. And oh, by the way, that means you'll be making roughly half of what Sting and Lex Luger, two guys that you think you made, well, they're going to be making more than you now. I mean, that's probably the gist of Flair's frustration more than anything else. It's one thing to go to him and say, hey, business is down, we need a pay cut. It's another to say, well, you're going to be the third highest paid guy on the roster, and these two guys who are above you, you probably made them. But whatever, we got what we needed out of you, so here's less.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just bad management. Somebody listening will say, you know, I love Ole JR and Conrad. They're straight up, but I think they're really wrong on this one, because nobody could be that fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, they could. Again, go to the bottom of your card and find people that aren't in a position right now to contribute to even earn that salary. Those are the ones that you, as professionally as you can, say goodbye to. And they start doing your math. I'm going to take it from those guys before I'm going to take it from my main event guys.
Yes.
And anybody else that would anybody disagreeing with that, you've never managed people. You want to take care of your producers,
right,
your stars, wherever it may be. So it was the wrong logic, quite frankly. And you start out with a scenario and a philosophy that if it happens, is it's going to spread shit all over the company. And that's what we did. It was embarrassing.
You wrote in your book, there was a very distinct, stark difference in philosophy and opinion between the two men. Their lack of communication with each other allowed the problem to manifest itself into an unsolvable issue where eventually there was no solution left on the table. Did you know right away? I mean, 'cause obviously he has other opportunities based on his celebrity, but realistically, you had to know, well, if he's leaving here, he's going to work for Vince. It ain't like he's calling up Herb Abrams or going to Japan, right?
Right. Yeah. No, it was obvious where he'd head, and he knew that Vince would use him well. That's all Vince got to say to you. I'll use you good. And guys that understand the business know that means you're going to be working in the main events or somewhere in the top third of the card, or you get a chance to make more money.
Yeah. Your income's going to be there.
Because then they were still getting paid by the houses. And they weren't like these huge guaranteed contracts where guys got their salary and lost their incentives. So they had to still draw money. And if he says he's going to put you in a position, and he did. Vince put Rick in a top position from day one.
I feel strongly that saving money is important. You know, if it's not something we worry about now, boy, we are really going to worry about it later. And I want to help you get out of debt faster and do it with cheaper monthly payments. I'm talking to you if you're in a 30-year loan. Now is the time to take years off of your loan. We're routinely helping our listeners cut 5, 10, even 15 years off their loan. And you can do this without perfect credit with no money out of pocket. You've just got to start at savewithconrad.com. So let's get to the world title match. Before we do, I guess we should remind everybody, Flair has the big gold belt. Flair had to put up a deposit when he won the world title, which was $25,000. He never got that deposit back. So he kept the belt. And as the famous story goes, to prove to Vince that no, this time is different. I'm really coming this time. I'm not going to say I'm coming and then not come, because I think Flair had done that at least 2 other times. Flair overnights Vince McMahon the big gold belt. So they know for sure he's really coming now. But now that we have to sort of let the show go on here in WCW, we'd no longer have a world title. So they order a new one from Reggie Parks. Most people refer to it as the Ron Simmons belt or the Vader belt. That's the one that is synonymous with this era of WCW, but it's not yet finished because, by God, he just left 2 weeks ago. They haven't made it yet. So what do they do instead? They take an old Florida Championship Wrestling territory belt that Dusty had, and they sort of gimmick it up with another plate on top that says World Champion, and they try to shoot around it and not show it. And different photo ops and stuff, they would even not show the belt, but you could sort of see that there was one there. They would use a tag belt. I mean, we don't think about that very often, but this has never happened before. We've never needed a backup belt. What do you mean we don't have the belt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, again, another embarrassment. Not paying attention to the details.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at savewithconrad.com.